You may have heard, it's because it's made national news in the last couple of weeks, about Sister Wilhelmina Lancaster. She died about, I think, 4 years ago, at the age of 95, in Gower, Missouri. Her religious community, they needed to move where she was buried to a different place, and when they exhumed her, they found, and by the way, her body was not embalmed prior to her burial. They discovered, much to everybody's surprise, that her body has not decayed in 4 years, and also have died at the age of 95. And I know there have been those in our parish who have gone up to see this amazing thing, and people from all over. And it made national news in the secular media. So some are asking, is it a miracle in Missouri? Because people are drawn to it. Now, I don't know if it's a miracle. We will see. We'll kind of let things play out. Is this some kind of natural phenomenon that explains this, or is it something else that obviously something unique has happened? And perhaps it is beyond the understanding, something not easily explained. As some might say, going up to see the body of this religious Benedictine sister, well, that's kind of weird. I once worked with somebody from Alabama, and the way she would put it, something like that, something odd would happen, she would just say, well, I think that was different. And her nose actually kind of, so it became, so I've said that ever since, about 30 years, I say, well, I think that person is different. And maybe some have the same attitude towards the body of Sister Wilhelmina. Something weird has happened. Maybe. But allow me to use a different word, other than weird or different. The word supernatural. A sign of something that is outside the normal limits of time and space. Perhaps this is an example of it. And people are drawn to this event, no matter what the explanation may be at the moment. We are drawn to things that are outside the normal limits of time and space. As what has perhaps happened with the body of Sister Wilhelmina, is it any more supernatural than some other things, such as the Incarnation, which is the very core of the Christian message, that God the Son becomes one of us in all things but sin, for our salvation. That God is not distant, God is not disinterested, God is not far away, but God enters into this time and place out of love for us. That God enters into human history in a specific time and place for our salvation. Is that any more supernatural than what might be happening in Gower, Missouri? Or is it any more natural than the resurrection? That Jesus, we proclaim as Lord and Savior, that 3 days after his crucifixion is raised from the dead in a physical body. Is it any more supernatural than the real presence of Jesus Christ in the Eucharist? Not as sign, not as mere symbol, but the very inner life of God offered to us, that which is beyond the normal limits of time and space, entering into the present moment for us, so that God's life can be in us and our life can be in God's. That's about as supernatural as you can get. We had this morning after the 9 o'clock Mass a traditional Corpus Christi procession. We took the Blessed Sacrament. We went out down the long corridor, out the north doors, and about down the sidewalk and around by the chapel. And I was carrying the monstrance that is in the chapel, the really old one, the really one that we really don't know how much it costs. So I was holding on to it pretty tight to make sure. Boy, if I drop this. But it was interesting, that procession was a public display of our joyful faith, our public display of something unique. It's this third procession I've taken part in the last couple of weeks. One was at St. Francis Hospital at the beginning of the month. The other was this last Thursday, in which we had a Mass at Christ the King Parish in Midtown Tulsa, and we processed 2 miles with the Blessed Sacrament to the cathedral. Hundreds of people took part. It was interesting to see people's reaction, who were not part of that procession. The people that were at Tucci's for dinner, they were on Cherry Street by Christ the King, they got more than their money's worth. I mean, they were all out there, and they were all had their cameras and their phones and videos, and thinking about, boy, I don't know what those Catholics are up to, but boy, it must be something special. So people coming out of their homes. So 2 people who probably working at a cleaning crew at a office building came out, and they were kneeling as we came past with the Blessed Sacrament. Another thing, at the hospital on June 1st, a man that, as we were coming back into the hospital, the Blessed Sacrament, I don't think he was Catholic, but he knew something special was going on because he got out of his car, took off his ball cap, and placed it over his heart. He knew something unique was taking place, even though he may not understand it. Because we are drawn to that which is beyond the limits of time and space. We're drawn to the supernatural. It's important that we have these public displays of a joyful faith because we live in a culture of disbelief in which what we can measure and taste and feel and then try to control the things of nature or use them to control others. But the supernatural continues to reveal itself to us. And not only in corruptible bodies or even in Eucharistic processions, but in each and every Mass that is offered and at every hour of adoration of the Blessed Sacrament. And the Eucharistic revival that we are in the midst of as a church is calling us to awaken in our hearts the truth of God's divine love for us in the incarnation that is present in the Eucharist. That the incarnation is not just a one-and-done thing. And for then Jesus, after he sends to God the Father and say, well, see you all later, at a time and date yet to be announced. Rather that he remains with us, present to us in a profound way, that God's life will enter into ours and our life will be united to the life of God. That our Savior shares our humanity so that we can share in his divinity. Whether we can fully understand it or not doesn't matter, in a sense. Let us be drawn to it nonetheless, as the supernatural once again enters into our world and enters into our life.